Hello, and thank you for joining us tonight for the 2022 Idaho Republican Primary Candidate Forum. My name's Daniel Silver, and I'll be your host for this evening. First, I know you had a lot of things you could be doing tonight, and we want to thank you for joining us. It's a really important thing that we're going to be watching tonight. We're going to be meeting with every single candidate who's running for statewide and federal office. And that person has the opportunity to represent you and me and all of Idaho for the next 2, 4, or even 6 years, depending upon the position. It's not something we should take lightly. So what we're going to be doing is sitting down for about 10 minutes with each of them tonight, and we're going to hear what's on their heart, learn a little bit about them, learn where they think things are going well or not within Idaho, and if given the opportunity, where would they take us in the future. Now before we start though, it's important to know that as an organization, Idaho Young Republicans does not endorse any candidate during the primary season. That's not our role. Instead, we want to make sure that you're as informed as you can be. And so that's our hope, that you get an opportunity tonight to learn about each and every candidate, and then you know what's best for you and your family. You know what's best to take you into the future. We just hope we can make that decision a little easier for you. So we're going to transition to Secretary of State. Now, I don't know about you, most people probably didn't even realize there was a Secretary of State until the last election cycle, but it's a very unique role, right? Over the elections for the state of Idaho, over the business services, over the land board, lots of complexity. And so our first guest we're talking with today is Dorothy Moon. Dorothy, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Daniel, for having me.
So let's pretend we don't know who you are. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've got a unique district. I'm a representative and have been for 3 terms. This is my 6th year, and I represent District 8, which includes very rural Idaho. I have Lemhi, Custer, Boise, Gem, and Valley County currently, but with the redistricting that has now changed. And it's 16,000 square miles, so I travel a lot, and I've represented salt of the earth people, but most of Idaho contains those kind of people, and they're hard workers and liberty and freedom lovers, and that's who I've liked and enjoyed representing. It's been a great honor. But now I'm segueing into the Secretary of State office. I've got 2 sons, 30, and one's going to be 29. And I really worry about our country and our state and the direction a lot of things politically, how they're moving. So I wanted to jump in and try to see if I could do a better job as Secretary of State, especially dealing with the issues that have, as you said, have come front and center since the November 2020 election. And I see a clear path on what I need to do. And I have lived in the forest off-grid since 2005 in the Salmon Chalice Forest up the Yankee Fork east of Stanley. And this unique lifestyle has put me front and center on lands issues. And as the Secretary of State, you do serve on the land board. So I think I've got a lot to offer in the entire realm of the services and the job description that the Secretary of State has. So
I believe there's about 3 candidates that are running for office. So what makes you uniquely qualified?
I think what makes me uniquely qualified is that I'm a lifelong educator. And the fact that I'm an educator, I've taught all the high school and middle school sciences. I was a special ed director. I've taught college level. And I think as an educator, we need someone to come into the Secretary of State's office and really bring the poll watchers and the election workers and the clerk up to speed on what's the requirements of those unique positions and what to expect, what to look for when you're working an election. And I would take the time, my first year, I would expect to go to all 44 counties and actually write out. Let them understand that we as a state expect uniformity and consistency in our elections, which is the #1 job of the chief election officer. And I think that we need to make sure if you're moving from Kootenai County down to Custer County, you kind of see the same procedures, same protocols in an election so that there's no concern and there's no doubt that the system is being run fairly across the state and a level playing field for all candidates. So I think that's one of the things that the Secretary of State's office that I see doing with my education, my formal education as a teacher. And the second part is I do have a master's in resource planning. And with that degree, I could definitely help with the land board. In lands, we're looking at fuels reduction, we're looking at water rights issues, we're looking at mining permits, we're also addressing recreational issues. So there's a lot of things with the 63% of these federally managed lands that we need to be involved with as a state. And I know the chief position on the land board is to provide, or to work, with the Idaho Department of Lands and provide the highest economic return on our endowment lands. And we are doing a pretty good job at that. But we can now move beyond the endowment lands and start working with the federal government through the Good Neighbor Authority to actually benefit local communities with those timber sales. So I think it's an exciting time. I'm very hopeful for Idahoans to benefit off of our resources instead of watching them go up in smoke every year.
So one of the things we both mentioned briefly is election integrity. And as we've heard from a lot of our members and Idahoans across the state, that's one thing they're concerned about. Where would you say the current status is of Idaho elections, the security, and if elected in office, where would you take it?
Aside from the education, I think what we need to do is follow the election law. And the election law is very clear. Now, I know the Heritage Foundation has us ranked as 38 out of 50 as far as election integrity issues go. I do see some weaknesses on forms of identification. I brought forward a bill, the Secure Election Act, that I got through the House this past year. And it was a great bill. It would do away with things like college IDs that don't have a birth date. It doesn't have citizenship. It doesn't really have an address. So there's not a lot of information on there aside from what school year you're attending and your picture. So things like that I think we could tighten up. I've heard about Costco IDs being used. We've got a state government issued ID. We've got driver's license, and if you can't drive or you don't want to drive, you can get a state government issued ID. So these are things that I think are easy fixes. It's obvious they should be state IDs, and the other thing also is residency. Going around the state, I've heard that some people are using a Verizon bill on their cell phone. Those Verizon bills are not tied to any address. So we need to make sure that they're bringing in viable utility bills or W-2 or 1099 or their stub from work that has their address on it. So those kind of things, we just need to tighten up a little bit.
So one last question, real tough one. Idahoans are entering into the primaries a week from today. Mm-hmm. So what message do you want to leave them with?
I think I'm the best person for this seat, and the reason why, I've got a proven conservative record. I've got a 98% with the American Conservative Union for my lifetime score, so I'm working to cut government and reduce spending in the House, and that's what I've always tried to do. I was so honored to be the Legislator of the Year in 2018 after being in for a couple of years, but I think the main thing that highly qualifies me is my career as being a legislator, my education, my formal education as an educator with my bachelor's, my master's definitely gives me a head up, and I've used both of them. And I think my unique lifestyle of living off grid and having these experiences with the forest fires or flooding or what have you, I've dealt with it and I've helped my citizens deal with the issues as well. So I think I'm the person, I really do. And I would be so honored to be your next Secretary of State. I will deal with these elections, and when Biden says he's going to make all of our elections national, no, we're not. We're not going to have federal elections in this state. We are a sovereign state, and we will fight that. We will make sure that we maintain and take care of our own elections.
Well, Dorothy, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and just wish you the best of luck, and we'll see what happens in a week.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks. Take care. Up next, our candidate for Secretary of State is Phil McGray. And Phil, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Daniel, and thanks, sir, Young Republicans, for having me.
No, I appreciate it. So let's just start off with a tough one. Tell us about yourself.
It's a privilege to be here. I'm a fourth-generation Idahoan. I was born and raised in Pocatello and then Boise. I have a loving wife and 3 young kids that live in the Boise area, and Idaho is home. I'm very proud to be an Idahoan. I was raised on a lot of the values that are attracting so many people to this state. Just, the idea of wanting to be left alone, to live off the land, to help a neighbor when they need a hand, and to be fiscally conservative. I've been active in the Republican Party since high school, helping candidates, attending rallies, doing fundraisers, and really my background has been close to politics in my entire life because I fell into a job right out of college, counting ballots when we voted on punch cards, recruiting and training poll workers, and being an entire part of our election system throughout that entire time. I'm very fortunate. My family lives here in this state, my parents, my 2 sisters, and Idaho really is home. And I just love being here. And it's one of the things that motivates me to continue in this run is because I want my children to be just as blessed as I've been.
So Secretary of State, I think we'd all agree that, just even a few years ago, people didn't know that role existed. It oversees so many distinct areas, whether it's elections, business services, land board. It's kind of an eclectic group there. What makes you uniquely qualified to serve in this role?
One of the things that really makes the Secretary of State unique is it is an executive branch function, and it's one where you have to roll up your sleeves and do the work. My background is in running elections. I've been a part of the election system since straight out of college. I've worked very closely with Secretary Denny and Secretary Usursa over the years to make sure our election system works smoothly. I'm currently the chair of the Elections Committee for the Idaho Association of County Recorders and Clerks. And in my role as a clerk, we're the ones actually doing the counting of ballots and actually running and setting up the polling locations and doing all of that. And the Secretary of State serves as the backbone of that system. And this really is a role where experience counts. As the clerks look for assistance and guidance from the Secretary of State, they're looking for someone who has the answers and can deal with the challenges that are faced. Many people don't think about it, but our elections are often the largest event planning operations that we have in any community, anywhere in the state of Idaho. It's hosting an event just like a backyard barbecue, except for you invite everyone in the community to come out and be a part of it. And that really, there's a lot of complexity that goes into that. But one of the things we've learned over the past 2 years is as we look around the country and the challenges that are faced in places like Arizona and Georgia and Pennsylvania is how important the people and the processes are in our elections. And so I want to bring my experience at the ground level, having counted ballots, having worked with clerks, to make sure that we can continue to have confidence in Idaho. I think we're blessed to be Idahoans. I think when we look across the country, we're blessed to have the election system that we do. And I want to do everything I can to protect it, especially as we see groups from Washington, D.C. and beyond trying to influence Idaho or to change it because other states are having problems. Idaho, the best thing that we can do on so many fronts is to just do it the Idaho way. And I want to make sure our elections are done the Idaho way where every vote counts.
So you mentioned a little bit about election rules and things like that across the country. As we have had a chance to talk to members and people across the state, election integrity, election security is one thing that's just on top of everyone's minds. Describe to me what you think the current state of Idaho election security is, and if you were in role, where would you take it? What would we do different, or if anything?
Yeah, when you think of election integrity and security, there's so many things that come to mind for me, having been a part of it. When I started in the role and we were using punch cards, cybersecurity wasn't even a conversation that we were having. Today, I haven't gone to a conference where cybersecurity doesn't take up half the agenda, right? Because the challenges we face as more and more we rely on technology and as our population continues to grow as a state becomes a bigger challenge. And so it's important that we constantly stay at the forefront of what's coming our way. I think we've done a great job in the state. We have protections in place that people don't realize. Like when you register to vote, we're checking against the Department of Transportation, the Social Security Administration, Department of Corrections, vital statistics, and we're regularly cleaning up and checking our voter rolls to make sure that only people who should be voting are the ones who are voting. Beyond that, we're also working to protect our elections by prosecuting voter fraud. And I think we have to be vigilant. And that's one of the things that I want to lead in the Secretary of State's office is to make sure that we're taking all the actions, not just in, say, Boise, but we're doing the same thing in Preston or Bonners Ferry or Salmon, and that every vote in Idaho counts the same. I think we lead the way in the country in terms of how we vote, and we want to continue to be able to do that.
One last question. So Idahoans head to the ballot box a week from today. They're going to select who's going to represent us in November. What message do you want them to leave with as they think about you when they go into that ballot box?
I think one of the first things is the fact that you're even watching these videos says you're engaged. We need more Idahoans to be engaged. Our republic depends on people taking an active role and exercising their right to vote. So thank you for participating, and make sure you make a plan for May 17th. It's important that you vote, not just for the Secretary of State's race, but for all of the races. I really care and have a passion for this work. I've spent my life making sure people can vote. I've counted over millions and millions of votes across my career, and I want to do everything I can to get more people engaged, especially in our primaries. In a state like Idaho, this is such an important part of the process, and so we need more members to get engaged. I think the young Republicans have done an amazing job over the last year getting more young people involved. And too often when we think of voting, we're thinking of older generations, and our future depends on us. It depends on people like Daniel, you and I, and so many others getting engaged in the system. I'm excited for the future of our state. I'm excited for the things we can do. I would love to have everyone here's vote and support in our campaign so that we can continue to carry out our message throughout the state, not just into the November election, but into many elections beyond. And I'm excited for this work. I have a passion. As you know, Daniel, I'm an elections junkie. I could either bore you or entertain you with information, but it really is a privilege to be here with the young Republicans today. And hopefully we see more and more people than ever engaged in voting on May 17th.
Phil McGran, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So up next for Secretary of State, we have Mary Souza. Mary, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Daniel. I'm glad to be here.
So let's start off with an easy one.
Okay.
Tell us about Mary.
Well, that's not such an easy question, Daniel, but that's okay. I'm happy to start with that because I am a wife of 43 years to my wonderful husband, and we have 4 great kids. They are grown and highly successful, happy kids, and have given us 2 wonderful grandkids that we love to get together with. We have a lot of extended family. We're very family-oriented people. So I started out as a nurse out of college and a critical care nurse, and really enjoyed that. I'm a nurturing person. My husband started a business a few years later, and I was a nurse for 10 years, and then he started this business and asked me to come and be general manager for 2 years. And 15 years later, I said, honey, I think I'm done. I think you've got a great staff. And so I got busy with school-related things with the kids and community-related things. And one thing led to another, and I was in the Senate. And so now I'm finishing my 8th year in the State Senate representing Coeur d'Alene, and it has been really a wonderful experience.
So Secretary of State, it's a little bit of a unique role. Most people didn't even probably know there was one until the elections last 2020. You're over elections, you're over business services, you're over the land board.
Yes.
Lots of things. What makes you uniquely qualified to serve in that role?
Thank you. That's a really great question because I am actually uniquely qualified. With my background as a critical care nurse responding to crises, and we certainly have had our share of those lately, even though they were healthcare crises, they certainly have an equivalent in other issues that the Secretary of State might have to deal with. And the best thing to do in a crisis is a general consistency among all of the different issues you can come up with. So it's being calm, being careful, looking through all the problems and reacting quickly with a decisive action. So that is definitely something that as a member of a code team on a cardiac unit in a critical care area, I was certainly involved in. I also have been a business owner for the 37 years, as I told you, and so I have that awareness of the needs of business and the needs for low regulation and government help, but staying as far out of the way as possible. The land board is interesting because there's never been a member of the land board in the history of Idaho that anyone can tell me about that has come from North Idaho, which is a center for timber and mining, and that's where I live. So we are very focused on the resources and the importance of resources in our state. And just as an aside, it's really important that we just had a bill that was passed through the Senate unanimously a couple weeks ago to increase the hazard or to create hazard pay for wildland firefighters. In the past, we've been losing our wildland firefighters to other states that pay more and offer hazard pay during active fire situations. We pay less for our firefighters per hour than McDonald's pays. and we are losing them. So the Idaho Department of Land's budget and the hazard pay for wildland firefighters both came up for a vote in the Senate 2 weeks ago, and I voted yes, and the entire Senate was unanimous. But a number of people over in the House voted against it, including a person who wishes to be involved in the land board. So I think it's really important that we be consistent with what we support and our actions follow that.
So coming out of the 2020 elections, even today, one of the things I hear from a lot of our members and people across the state is just the concern for election integrity.
Yes.
I know you're passionate about that issue. Describe to me where you think the current status is of Idaho elections, and if elected, what would you change? What would you go after? What would you do different?
That's probably the most important question you could ask. And right now, there are a lot of people who are questioning the integrity of our Idaho elections. We have no proof of any faults or fraud on a large scale. Certainly, there are individual instances, but none of it that adds up, but also no one is looking. So if you don't search for anything, if you don't look, if you don't examine, then you won't find any problems. We can't do that in Idaho. We are in a very vulnerable spot in our state because of all the other states around us that have massive changes to their election systems, and we don't want to go down that route. We don't want to have all mail ballots like Washington, Oregon, California have, because it's really not a trustworthy system. So I am a member of the Honest Election Project, which is a group of election experts that have invited 12 legislators from across the nation, all of them from swing states except me. And the reason that they have done this is we get together twice a year for these intense workshops. But the reason they've done this is because they know Idaho is in the target zone, and that we have to really be careful. And then Heritage Foundation just came out with a scorecard of election integrity for every state. And what they said about Idaho surprised me, and it surprised everybody. We are ranked number 38th out of 50 in the nation. So it also lines out where our vulnerabilities are, the weaknesses in our laws, and how we can bolster those. So this last session, I tried bringing 5 very good bills having to do with all of areas of our weaknesses, and 4 of them, 2 on the House side and 2 on the Senate side. I have an opponent on the House side, and I have an opponent with very deep connections on the Senate side. And 2 of my bills on each side were blocked. They were blocked because of politics. These were good bills that were vetted by national experts in conservative election integrity. So I was able to get one bill through. It's kind of a stealth bill. It didn't look like an election bill, but it's really very important. And it says, well, I can't tell you. We don't have enough time, but it's a very good bill, and I'm glad that it went through and the governor signed it. So it gives us a little bit of help on our election integrity. But when I'm Secretary of State, we will be bringing the ID bill back. We will be bringing the ballot harvesting bill that I've tried twice now, the session before this last one and this one, both blocked for political reasons. We have no ballot harvesting law in Idaho. So you could have people gathering up hundreds of absentee ballots and dumping them in a ballot drop box in the middle of the night, and it would not be illegal in Idaho. Even if they paid someone for those ballots, would not be illegal because we don't have a we don't have a law prohibiting it. So I don't like ballot harvesting at all. I don't like ballot drop boxes that are unmanned. The only way we can do ballot drop boxes is to have an election staff person during election hours standing there and taking the filled out absentee ballot from the voter with their ID showing and put it in the ballot box. And there are so many other things we need to do, but that's just a sampling.
So one last question. A week from today, everyone's heading to the ballot box, primaries are over. What do you want them to walk away with thinking about you when they head in the ballot box?
I want them to know that I'm the person that has the deepest connection with election integrity issues, and I respect the legislature very much. And as Secretary of State, I would not have a vote on any bills at all, but I would be able to work with the legislature on bills to improve our election integrity. And that's what I've done well in my time in the Senate. Let me just give you, do I have time to give you a quick example? The hardest bill I have, this has nothing to do with election integrity directly, but the hardest bill I've ever worked on was the Fairness in Women's Sports Bill. And that's the bill that says boys cannot play on girls' sports teams in Idaho. You would think that would be a no-brainer in Idaho, but it was tremendously difficult. It was stressful. We had to be, the House sponsor and I had to be walked out to our cars by security more than once because of the protests that were going on. And Idaho was the first state in the nation to get that bill through. That kind of fight, that kind of tenacity is what I will bring to the Secretary of State's office, because honest elections are what we all need to be able to trust in our state. They're the foundation of everything that we do. Every other choice we make, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, it doesn't really matter. If you can't trust that your vote for whoever you think would be the best governor or lieutenant governor or legislator, if you can't trust that, then we have lost our freedoms.
Mary Suze, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Before we close, there's two things I want to remind you of. First, please don't forget to get out there and vote 1 week from today on May 17th. Regardless of who you're voting for, it's important to have your voice heard. That person has an opportunity to represent you and me and the entire state for the next 2, 4, or 6 years, and we need to take that seriously. The last thing is really to remind you that on May 18th, we all need to wake up, regardless of who wins the primary, and support that candidate. For all the differences, for all the uniqueness that God made with each of us, we're still one Republican Party. We have way more in common than we have apart. And so no matter who wins, I want to ask you to rally behind them, just like we will with Idaho Young Republicans, just like we will with the state party. And we're going to get out there and do everything we can to help that candidate win the election in November. That's how we keep conservative values alive in the state. That's how we keep Idaho red. For all that, I want to say thank you again. Hope you have a wonderful evening. Take care, God bless, and God bless Idaho.